Hello and welcome to this first developer tech talk. My name is Yves de Beer. I'm a developer advocate at IBM and I'm joined by my colleague Eric Michiels.
Yes, my name is Eric Michiels indeed, and I am an architect at IBM Belgium.
So in this talk, we'll cover back to the basics and we'll show you how to deploy a Node.js application onto the IBM Cloud. First of all, of course, if you want to deploy to the IBM Cloud, you need an IBM Cloud account. You can do this by going to the IBM Cloud logon page on cloud.ibm.com, but you can also find the link in the description below. And here you can see you can create a light account. It's totally free, no credit card needed for that. So let's get started straight away and log in. I have created an account for that, and I will log into the system. And first we get a view on the dashboard where you can also find the catalog with all kinds of services ready to deploy, but we'll probably cover some of those services in the next episodes. So here I'm already logged in, and for today we'll have a look at how to deploy a Node.js application. So we'll get our information from the documentation. And you can all find videos and all kinds of instruction material over there. Let's go to the build and we can select our favorite programming language. We will select the Node.js for today. And there we get a full getting started tutorial on how to deploy a Node.js application onto the cloud. First of all, we will show most of the things on this tutorial using the command line. You will need to start installing the command line with the instructions listed here below for the different operating systems. I have already installed the IBM Cloud CLI. The IBM Cloud CLI also allows you to deploy everything on Docker, Cloud Foundry, but we'll use the Cloud Foundry runtime in this tutorial. Automatically after installation, there's a command line CLI IC alias that is created for you. So first thing we need to do is, well, let's log in first to the IBM Cloud. Okay, so what we see is that automatically I'm logged in and I'm attached to the region in Germany. Now my organization for Cloud Foundry is not yet linked to that, so I can just follow the instructions. IBM Cloud target -cf. And then I only have one organization and one space, so it automatically attaches to that. If you have multiple, it will start in, to put these answers into interactive mode. So I'm logged into the cloud now. Now let's first have a look at our local application. I have a small application, the basic Node.js application, which uses an Express framework, just listens to an HTTP port on port 3000, and you just have the hello world on there. So let's start and test this locally. So the app is listening on port 3000. We go to the browser. We get our hello world message back. So we see the application is working. So as a next step, we can push our application onto the cloud. And you can simply do that by typing in IBM Cloud CF, or I also created an alias just to have the CF command. So it makes it easier just to do the Cloud Foundry commands. So let's now deploy it. What you see in the logs here is that he's trying to figure out what runtime is needed for that, what build pack he's going to use for that. Of course, he detected that's a package JSON file that is available locally, so he figures out it's probably a Node.js runtime. So
if in case you see sometimes warnings there, should you be afraid of these warnings? Or can you neglect them sometimes in these messages?
Yeah, these warnings normally we just have to, it's the part of the build process. Probably the warnings just make sense in case something would go wrong in the end. If the app would not be running, then it might be interesting to look what these warnings mean. But we can also find more information in the logs at the deployment, which I will show you straight away. So you see here that automatically we have now our app is up and running. And as is deployed, you can also see that it automatically takes a route for that, so it's publicly deployed. So we can just go to this URL. And we see the same result. So now application is running into the cloud on this URL. Now be careful, because if this name would already exist, you probably get a warning for that. And one of the options you could use is to do, for example, the push, but with an option minus random route, and then automatically the system will pick something randomly and deploy that as a name. Or you can take another name, of course. Now, what we can also do is change the way the runtime would behave. So for example, we can make it more instances. With the options, maybe take, well, there's an option -b, which you could use if you want to have a specific build pack deployed. But for example, if you want to change the memory, instead of 1 GB of memory, just want to limit to 256. And maybe give it 2 instances. Then it will go through the deployment process again.
Is there an easy way, Yves, to have an idea about all the options of the CF push command? You know a lot of them by heart, but how can you know what is possible?
You can, well, just here you can see that our memory has changed for both instances to 256 instead of 1 GB. So we have multiple systems or instances running at the moment. So for your question, you can just type in the CF command and you can see all the options that are available over there.
Great. Yeah.
For example, you can also have a look at the build packs. CF build packs. These are the build packs that are available straight away within the Cloud Foundry runtime environment for you to deploy. Of course, if you have a specific build pack from the community, you could also try to deploy that from there. Now, our application, you can test it from the command line. What does it again? You can see our application is still up and running. Now, the command line, the CF command also works with plugins. For example, for the moment, we don't have any plugins installed, but we can try to install one. We can just have a look at, as it says, repo plugins. And then you get a list of all possible plugins that exist. One of those that I often use is the open command. CF install plugin open. You can install that. And it's installed right now. If we look at the plugins, you will see on the list that is open. The open plugin is installed. And now we can just type CF open and then my application, tiny Node.js. And what it will do is just take it from the runtime and just open it into a browser, which makes it easier just to, instead of typing the name of your application, just open it straight away from the command line. Now, of course, all these parameters like the memory, the number of instances, you could do that from the command line, but there's also a way to use a configuration file for that. And this is stored into a manifest file. So from our application, we can just create a manifest file. And by default, you will see that now he created a tiny Node.js manifest YAML file. And when we look into that manifest file, you can see the same parameters as we did from the command line, using the routing, the amount of memory, the number of instances, specific routes that you want to use if you want to change the name. All these configurations are deployed from there. And there's also an option to specify the YAML file itself. Because by default, if you just do nothing, just do a CF push, it will take the manifest YAML file as a default from there. Mm-hmm. So it's up to you. You can specify a specific YAML file, but by default, we use the manifest.yaml file. So one other thing that is interesting to know, of course, you mentioned, Eric, the warnings. Now let's have a look into the logs and look into the logs of our application on the Cloud Foundry runtime. So this will give you an overview of the logs for the last period. That's all the way going from when we started to do the deployment. But, so there you also see the warning messages over there.
Indeed, yeah.
And if you're doing some deployment, or maybe let's try and do it just like that. What it's now doing is starting from the logs that would come in from the moment. So when we go to application, for example, we do a refresh. You can see here that you get the information back of the HTTP request that's coming through to our application. So that's a way to see what's happening directly within the runtime. Now, let's have a look at what else we can do with the Cloud Foundry application. Most of the times, well, running an application on itself is not so interesting because the application is deployed in Cloud Foundry as a sort of a container. So if it would crash or needs to be restarted, you lose well, the existing runtime. If you want to store something maybe within the application, that wouldn't be a good idea. So probably you want to link that to a database. So with the CF Marketplace, you get a list of all services that can be used in combination with the Cloud Foundry runtime.
So that are all services in the IBM catalog that you can invoke from a Cloud Foundry application if...
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So for example, well, the format is a bit out because of the large descriptions, but we can, for example, have a look at one of those. Services that are in there, which is the Cloud NoSQL database. And you can see that it has different plans. There's a light plan, which you can use for free with your light account. And there's a standard plan available with some more details about what you get for these plans. Now let's get a service, a Cloud service. Name. You have to pick the light plan. So I was creating an instance of a cloud database onto the cloud environment. We can also view this into our cloud dashboard. Now the service is being created at the moment. Service IDB. Let's see what the status is. The create is in progress. We can also see that from our dashboard. When we go to the resource list, we can see that the provisioning is in process. Normally that should just take a couple of minutes. Yep, so the create has succeeded. Now, as a next step, how do we create the application to talk to the database. Of course, you will need to create some code to address this database, but to make it easier to have the security and authentication process from within your, so you can access it from your application. You can just bind this service onto our application. And then in order to make use of this binding of the database to our application, we just need to restart our application. There's no need to do the full restaging because, well, we didn't make any changes for the moment to our application. So we can also view this onto the dashboard.
So if to make things clear, if you would have made changes to the code of the application, we would have needed a restage. And now we just need a restart, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, of course, if we start to do some development, of course, and then we need to do a restage of the application. So here you can also see this same information as we saw from the command line. We see our application, tiny Node.js. We can do a visit to the URL here, like we did with the CF Open. We have the build pack for Node.js, 2 instances in the memory. You can also make the changes from there. And we see that we have a connection to our database from here. So this mainly concludes what we wanted to show in here. I hope you enjoyed it, and this was a first step onto creating your Node.js application and how to deploy that onto the IBM Cloud. Probably in the next session, we will go a bit deeper and show you a bit how to use the Node.js application and make it talk to the cloud and database and make something of a more useful application for that. So I hope you enjoyed this session and see you on the next one.